Hello everyone, welcome to the artclasses.com channel. This is Xia Taptara speaking. This video is going to be a Procreate tutorial on how to draw a muscular character arm or the muscle on your arm. So basically we are going to focus on the arm that are facing us, which is on the left side of the character. We're going to explain the deltoid, bicep, and tricep, and the forearm. But we can also include the torso and a little bit of the character design aspect of the character. But since we are going to see the arms a lot more than the other part, including the pecs and the abdominal muscle, we're just gonna sort of focusing on the arm basically. And I am going to show you how to draw and render the rest of the character as well. And if you want a still image to draw along with or to keep it as reference, as we shown here, you're gonna see I'm breaking down the muscle group of the arm and on the torso in color code. You can also easily find that by going to Google and search for my name, Xia Taptara, and then my male anatomy or male muscle anatomy. Then you are going to see these 2 or 3 images. There'll be a few of them. So just go ahead and try and keep. Alright, let's get started. So if you like the video, please click thumbs up, and if you learned something, also click thumbs up, and you can leave the comment if you have any question. I will try to get to them all as soon as I can. Alright, so I'm changing the background color to 80% gray, and I am using a default brush that came with Procreate. So I'm just resizing the brush as you see in the video. I usually start off pretty simple and with just the shape of the head and the direction it's facing, and then the torso, the form of the torso, but I'm not going into any detail. Just a pretty rough ideas of where the arm and everything else should be. So now I'm going to the deltoid, bicep, and I'm going tricep. And if you are still a beginner, you don't have to go as fast as I am. Trying to get the proportion correct, that is very important. And if you don't really know where the proportion actually, how it works, then you can go find a reference on Pinterest or anywhere that will give you a pretty good male image with muscle or something like that, right? Or you can just capture my image and then try to copy it or something. That would work also if that what you preferred. So now I'm adding some sort of a leggings, which is some kind of a hakama lookalike or a long bottom, but I'm trying to give him a shirt or a jacket, I don't know what you call it, gi, on top that is hanging off from his bottom part of the dress or the outfit. I shouldn't say the dress. And then I'm trying to have him carry a sword, but then I figured, well, you have to figure out this position of the hand. So I'm just gonna have maybe his thumb is facing us, or he, you know, like when you're carrying a sword, you have to figure out what direction is the thumb facing, or which direction is the pinky facing in terms of finding a sword. So now I make a new layer underneath the previous one. I rename it to line, and then once I have this very sketchy line, then I'll just go in with a new layer and trying to create a shape. I like working with shape a lot if you've seen my video, but line is still pretty important sometime to start with, or sometime to give it an indication of the position of what would be important or what you want to emphasize in the drawing. Like in this one, I'm trying to emphasize the arm in the front, so I'm drawing line over it to give it some hint of where the particular muscle groups are. And when I'm putting the value down, or if you're trying to shade, or you call shading or rendering, I usually try to limit the whatever I'm trying to paint into tree palette, because that's pretty much what you're going to be noticing the most, like the mid-tone, the light tone, and the dark tone. So if you're going any more than that, it's going to be very hard to deal with. Like if you go 3 to 5, 5 would be pretty hard. I usually go from a mid level. Let's just say 3 value of mid, light, and dark in the mid level. So I'm not going to extremely dark in the beginning or extremely light in the beginning, unless it was a local color, like what I'm doing here, which is going to be the top part of the jacket, right, or the tee. I'm not sure what to call a shirt, since it's supposed to have like some specific name, but I forgot what it's called. And I'm still using pretty much all the default brush, just the round, solid, hard edge. Now I am trying to figure out the brush size and opacity. Sometimes I would accidentally have my pinky scrolling down the opacity, and I paint and I couldn't get the pen on, so I thought, what's wrong with the program? Maybe there's a bug. But it's actually my left finger that sliding down that slider itself. So now I'm trying to get the direction of the face, and usually I'll draw the line across the face horizontally and vertically to get the vertical line will be where the nose line up, so I know which direction is the face is facing, and then the horizontal line would be where I would put the eye, the location of the eyes. So this line that I put down are the indication of where I would try to locate things, right? Same as what I did with the arm in the beginning. And I'm not finishing the drawing because as I paint, I probably will figure out where all those part of the bodies are. I don't need to try to get it to the final drawing in the beginning because I know that it's going to be painted, right? But if you prefer to know or to have a finish line then paint over, then that's entirely up to you. But different people have a different way of working. But I find that this way is a lot easier and a lot faster for me to work with. So now I'm adding some beard and some hair, and it's going to be pretty rough. I would wait until the end, until I'm trying, until I'm like to apply the really dark shadow, like occlusion shadow or something that would throw off the painting as of now. Like you can see at this moment, it has 3 values, as I said. The hair is 1 value, the body is 1 value, and the hakama is 1 value, right? So they have 3 stages. And also, as I paint, you would separate the local value you would split them into 3 also. So the muscle or the skin part, you would kind of break them down into 3 value again, so you can render them in shadow, mid, and light, right? But you're not going to go that far off from the range that you put down to begin with. So say if you put 50% or 70% as, let's just say you put 70% gray as a skin tone, you probably want to go only 50% for the dark, and then maybe 80% for the light. So, and then as you're trying to complete your painting, you slowly expand or putting more extreme value as you go. That's what I usually do. And at this point, I would be more concerned about the proportion rather than trying to go in and start drawing or rendering the muscle group like deltoid, bicep, tricep. You can worry about that later. So I make a copy of the outline so that I can hide one, and I will use one as I go along and trying to paint or render, right? So I'm using the existing layer for the line, and I'm adding additional value, which is so it's going to be the darker color, like for this local color for the skin. And I'm trying to paint with regular default brush and using the smudge tool to render the making the transition or smoothing the surface a little bit. If the surface of the object is round, chances are you're gonna have to like make it smooth. But then when the muscle is crisscrossing, like when the muscle deltoid overlapping with the bicep, then you're gonna see the hard edge on the bottom part of the deltoid, and then it's gonna start when you start the bicep overlapping, then you're gonna see the lighter part of the bicep coming down. And this assuming that the light is coming from the top, so that you see the shadow usually on the bottom, and when it's on the bottom it's either on the left or on the right. So it shouldn't be any different than that in the normal setting, because that's how we see people most of the time. But if you want different lighting, if the lightings come from weird direction, then you're going to have to set up the lighting in a different way. But this is just regular lighting that you see in normal regular day life, because most of the time you're going to be seeing people from, let's just say, 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. At night it's going to be a different beast when you're trying to deal with the value in painting. So now I'm going back to the pecs using the same method. I'm just trying to paint with default brush and trying to get the value. As you can see, I'm not trying to go over 3 for each area, right? So just dark, mid, and light, and the mid-tone on the pecs, and then the light area for the pecs on the part that is connected to the deltoid or the shoulder. Now I'm doing the rib cage on the side and trying to add some abdominal. Alright, so now I'm kind of preparing this particular, so I go for the part that will be in the shadow. Like those lines are the line that hidden from the light, like the bottom of the pecs, right? So that's part will be the part that's dark. So you're gonna have to kind of go from shadow to the light, and there's a different way of looking at how you're gonna create those forms. Usually I will in my head break it down to geometry and which plane is facing where. If the plane is facing away from the light, the plane, by planes I mean the surface of the object, which direction is it facing, right? As the plane turn around, as you go along the surface, you see that each plane facing the lighting in a different way, and that's how it's create the form. Without light, there wouldn't be any form. So all the form or all the rendering in painting or drawing or sketching or shading totally relying on the light source. Okay, so now we have kind of like a pretty solid somewhat base. Once I worked out all these value that I have, or all these medium shading that I have, this is basically mid-tone. We are still dealing with the mid-tone here, so I haven't put any super light tone or super dark tone yet. A lot of time when we're sketching, we can leave it at mid-tone, and we may be adding a little bit of the extremely dark or almost black into the occlusion area. Highlight are not necessary, but if you know where to put them, then you can put them. But be very careful with the highlight, because they can either throw off your painting or throw off your rendering or shading. And also, as I'm using these tools in Procreate, I find that the smudge tool are pretty useful at what I'm doing right now too. I usually leave, I just work on one side of the line. So if I put a really thick line on, then I will leave the hard edge as the hard, and I will smudge on the other side to get the roundness of the object. And it is a pretty useful tool, but there's a couple of days in the morning this week I overdo it and it doesn't turn out that well, so I have to kind of throw them away. And usually when you kind of rely on a certain tool too much, then you forgot how to, like, sometimes you get it too soft and you kind of like, oh, it's look really soft, and you want it to be soft. But I like to leave some sort of roughness to the drawing, so it got some kind of energy. and a little bit of like not a little bit, but half of it, or 40% of the time, I will leave it hard edge and leave it pretty sketchy. I don't usually go into all the way rendered. I kind of want to leave some part as loose, so that it has that, I don't know, just some charm. Unless the direction from the director or from the client, they want the finished stuff, then I will just render them all the way. But usually I'll just leave it 80% finish and 20% just kind of making it loose. And a lot of time in speed painting, if you see my speed painting, I just focus on whatever that are in the focal point, and the rest are just kind of suggestion. And this is like pretty much the same way. So now I'm slowly adding abdominal muscle, and you can see I'm just kind of picking the value from the existing area by using the color picker, and I'm trying to add more value to that. And now I'm using soft brush to kind of get everything to look connected, because there's a part that make it look separate, especially when it has the really light value from one area to the other area, and sometimes it looks so obvious. So soft brush in here are a pretty good tool to kind of making things blend together. But in Photoshop, I find that the soft brush in Photoshop works a lot better. You can have more control because usually I use pen pressure rather than going into the opacity and turn it up and down. Like if you see me working in this Procreate also, I'm not usually touching the opacity. I'll leave it at 100% opacity, and I'll just figure out how the pressure would work instead of trying to deal with the opacity, because it's a lot quicker that way. Once you get the feel of your hands and how hard you want to touch in Procreate or how light, then I think Apple Pencil is a pretty good measurement on the sensitivity, almost as good as Wacom, or maybe it is, but maybe I'm just not used to it yet. So, all right, now where we at? And as I work in this stage, I usually don't zoom in as much. I like to see the overall image so I can measure how dark and how light I should go on each part of the body or each part of the image. So now I am going into the occlusion area, or the focal point area. Then I'm going to try to add darker value by using brush and eraser. Eraser is a pretty fantastic tool in digital, period, because it can help you change the shape. It can help you tweak certain line into hard edge or soft edge without having to paint over and get more mess. You can paint one stroke and you can use eraser to work that stroke into some shape that you preferred. And also the smudging tool in Procreate, I find that is very, very versatile. So you can get the paint to the new location. You can extend it slightly a little bit longer. If you don't have enough paint to cover the whole area, it seems like it could, not really adding, but it could, like if you put it in one spot, you can blend it way longer than you would expect from the paint on the blush of paint in real paint or smudge in Photoshop. That's why I really enjoy using smudge tool in Procreate, but I never use them in Photoshop because I didn't really like how it looks. But in here, I like them just fine, or maybe I couldn't find any other way to get the form to look right, so I just use smudge tool and the brush. So, and as you can see, all the interface, they have those three tools on top right, on the top right corner, right? So I figured that's probably their weapons of choice that would be pretty useful when you are trying to create a painting or drawing. There's no other options that would get you as quick as those 3 icons. So yeah, and now we kind of got pretty much most of the body part, and you see on the shoulder and the pecs area it has that especially darker value than the rest, so that's where I'm gonna try to get my focal point. And then I make a copy of the render layer because I'm going to work on that layer again. So if I save it or make a copy of that layer, if I messed up, then I can always go back to that layer, because I don't know how much history or how many undo Procreate can do. So now I'm moving the head up a little bit because I think it's a little bit too short, and I merge everything down basically, and I'm moving it up to correct the proportion. And like I said, proportion is very, very important. If you want to do exaggerate proportion, that's also very important, but you have to know the real proportion of the human being to better able to stylize them, right? So that you can play with them much better when you know the actual proportion. So you're not getting stuck in one style and trying to get out that style, because there are certain people like to stick in a certain style and they kind of stuck in that realm and they don't want to get out of it, or they can't get out of it. But that's not a bad thing if that's that's your what you like to do or what you prefer to do. But for me, I kind of like to know how realism works, and then if I have certain style, then I just kind of mimic those styles and see, or trying to figure out what the proportion of those are. Because when you're making a video game or movie and you have to make something that fit the certain style that they have, you have to figure out, okay, how big are the head from the normal size, or how long is the arm, is it how much longer. So it's easier for you to analyze those when you know the real proportion. So now I'm getting to the face part, and I'm trying to tweak the shape of the face a little bit, and maybe I'm gonna add some more beard. And then the hair, there's nothing wrong with the hair. I think the hair looks fine, but in the end I change it into a more tribal Mongol look, sort of, either the Mongol, or maybe back in the day there was Xiongnu or something, right? I'm fascinated with their history and their warrior and their horses. All right, so now I'm just using the line to guide my facial structure. I probably won't render them as I render the muscle. I'm just gonna leave them as partially line work, right? Because like I said in the beginning, I like to let it lose some time, and for some part I'm just gonna render them to the point of like presentable. But this is basically a sketch, and I kind of like to leave some of them in scribble. So now I'm working on the collarbone area basically, and adding a darker value inside the shadow. So trying to get the shape of the neck. He's gonna have a pretty thick neck basically. Adding the cast shadow onto that side, because obviously the lighting is coming from the top right side of the screen. So his head will cast a shadow onto his shoulder. And now we're gonna get to work on the abdominal or six-pack. All right, I'm just, as you can see, as you saw earlier, I just draw one line that have 3 humps, and then I just use this smudge tool to work out those areas. And now I'm drawing another line on the other side of the pecs, or his chest, and then adding more value onto the other arm. The body is casting shadow on top of that arm. That's why it has that dark shadow on that side. Same as the body, same as the head that casts the shadow on the shoulder. So cast shadow, there are ways to sort of calculate that. You can either Google it or something, like, okay, where's the cast shadow would fall. It is very important, if you really taking this seriously, to know how the light works and where to calculate where the light would fall or something like that, to get the full effect, or to know where to put the contrast and things like that. Oh, I also have that in my Ultimate Digital Painting Guide for Beginner, Volume 1 and Volume 2. So that's all about, there are chapters about lighting, the light geometry shape and where the light would fall, how much the shadow, the value of the shadow would be, all those things, right? So you can go to my website, or you can go to gumroad.com/Xia Taptara, and you can download those, or you can download each chapter separately. But I would recommend getting the full tutorial so that you get the bang for the buck, because it has more than 10-15 hours of video. You can also go to cubebrush.co/Xia Taptara, same thing. Or you can go to my website directly, theartclasses.com. So now I'm start working on the leggings, and I'm trying to give it pleated, but then I forgot that there's still the bottom part of these leggings, sort of like a skirt. If you ever seen hakama, just Google hakama and you know what it looks like. But it's not going to be a typical kind of modern day hakama. I was thinking like the old days of how people would wear those things, and maybe adding some animal fur on top, things like that. So, but since it's in black and white, it's going to be pretty hard to convey those texture and those material. So when you are doing the character design, you have to consider those things. So doing the material study would be a very, very important things that you could educate yourself on that. And also in my premium tutorial on the Ultimate, they have that also, so you know what those are. But those can be pretty useful and pretty important in character design, so you can like when you look at the image, you know exactly, are those metal, are those cloth, are those fur, things like that. So you don't really have to like, oh, tell them that, hey, this is supposed to be metal, even though it doesn't render exactly like metal, or it doesn't render exactly like fur or leather for that matters. It's going to be easier for people to take your concept art into the production in 3D form, right? So some people just use line, and that's okay, and you just point at them and use local color, and you point them, this is metal and this is blah blah blah, you know. That would work also, but then they wouldn't know how shiny your metal should be. Is it a very matte metal, or is it a medium shiny metal, or is it a really glossy metal? Things like that. I said things like that a lot today. I don't know why. Sorry. Well, I'm not sorry, but I just couldn't come up with the good vocabulary, I guess. So now I'm painting the his top part. I mean his shirt or his cloth, his coat. So the coat's kind of hanging down, just like, you know, what you see in a samurai in the comic book or something, when they take off their gi and let it hanging over the hakama. And then if you see those gauntlet, or the cloth that wrapping around and the rope that wrapping around his wrist, the reason sometimes we usually put those in, it's a good indication of where the direction of the arm is going, by using the contour line to trick the eyes, or to give it visual of where the curve is facing, right? So treat it as if it's a cylinder. So if it's facing us on the left or on the right, or is facing backward. So contour line is another things to add onto your character, and to take advantage of that when you design a character, you have to using those contour line on certain part of the body. So you know, like especially the legs, if you want the legs to come forward, you can draw a contour line making the thighs coming forward, and it would look as if it's coming forward without having to do additional things, or without having to render. And they use that a lot in the comic book. So now we almost have the character. Not quite there. I'm just adding some darker value on the knuckle, and the back of the hand will be lighter. And since the knuckle and the top part of the fingers are facing down, then those are going to be in darker value because it will receive less light. And now I'm going to should work on the sword, I think, not sure. And you see here I only use basically just one. I think so far I've been using only default round brush, a little bit of round soft brush, maybe 10% of the time, but if you look through the video I use default brush a lot. So you shouldn't, like, if you don't know what to do with a custom brush, then don't really do it. Try to work with the default round as much as possible until you can make them look good. Then you can play around with the custom brush either in Photoshop, in Procreate, because there's a lot of time people ask me what kind of brush do I use. The brush will not give you the result that you want if you don't know what it can do. So if you can work with the default and make them look good, then you would be able to do the same thing with the custom brush also. But it's going to take an experiment with a custom brush, like what it can do when you stroke left or stroke right, or how much pressure you should put on it, and what kind of texture would it give. Would it fit the fabric, or would it fit the wood, or would it fit to be in the metal? Those kind of things you're going to have to experiment. And to render well and to know where the lighting would be, or to shade well, you have to be able to do it with the simplest tool first. Then you can go around and play with the fancy ones, right? That would be my recommendation. Now I'm adding more muscle on the forearm. These are just the hint or just the indication. They might not be super accurate, but just for the look, it looks good. But there are those muscles that were there, because those muscles are connected to the tendon would connect to your fingers, and those are the muscles that are around there. So if you have 4 or 5 fingers, they should have like at least 4 to 5 muscle that can able to pull those tendons around. All right, so now we are almost there. Now I'm just making the sword. So I just draw the line using Apple Pencil and hold it. Then you get a super straight line, which is a pretty convenient tool in Procreate. I wish Photoshop would have that. I'm not sure if it does. I've never seen it yet. I think it should. Just copy it, Adobe. I'm just kidding. You should though. Alright, now I'm making the hilt of the sword, and the guard. Oh wait, now I just realized that I have him grip the blade instead of the handle. So I'm gonna have to make the guard of the sword below the hand rather than on top of the hand, unless the sword is in the scabbard. So undo, and now I'm just drawing the fingers. But eventually I recognized that and I gave it a proper treatment. But at the moment I'm just kind of didn't think about it. Now I'm adding the guard. There we go. The guard, I didn't really like it, so just gonna use another layer just in case I messed up. Add the guard of the sword. Alright, so yeah, this is almost there, and adding some value, and we are almost at the end of the video here. And in the last part I'm just going to deal with his hairstyle basically. Maybe I'm just gonna fix some of the hands, not sure, but let's see here. Giving an indication of the forearm on this one, moving things around a little bit, because I think the fingers on the other hand looks a little bit too big in comparison to the left. or maybe I just leave it like that. It looks like a pretty nice gesture drawing, even though there, I fixed it, but I didn't record it, I guess. Alright, because I thought it was going to be a short video, but then I didn't realize I was going to tweak his hairstyle. Otherwise, I would have recorded that part on those fingers. I make the fingers slimmer, you notice. Now I'm giving him a haircut, giving him a bald head, and then gonna have some maybe small braids on the bottom end of the neck. Alright, so yeah, big forehead right there. He's going bald. Alright guys, so this is almost to the end of the video, and if you have any question, right now I'm just using paintbrush, soft round hard edge brush. I'm losing it the end of the day, and I usually record this at night after work. So I'm trying to get some fancy brush to give his hair some texture, or maybe his beard. And when you are painting, let's just say you're painting skin, and then you go into fabric or you go into hair, and those will be different type of material, right? You might want to try, even though it's just black and white, using different brush, so that it will give different treatment on the surface of the object, so the hair will look different instead of looking like a smooth painted skin that I did on this skin over here. It would have like those nice flowing texture, or you can use a long flowing hair or a short flowing hair, doesn't matter, or you can use stucco or any brush that would be different than you use on the skin. So sometimes it can give you a pretty cool result. Anyways, if you have any question, please post them down in the comment. Don't forget to click like if you like the video. If you don't like, that's fine. There are people who like it, I guess, but click like, don't be mean. And you can follow me on Instagram, or you can go download all those tutorials. All those links are below the video. I should have mentioned it in the beginning, but anyways. Alright guys, there's only maybe a minute or two left. Have a great day guys. I will see you soon. Bye bye.